And there they are. Oi. Yeah.
Oi.
Okay, here we go. I fixed
All
it.
right.
Okay, so give me a second here to get us on a Facebook because I messed something up here when I know, right? But it'll just take a
Grumble,
second. But we can go
grumble.
ahead and start talking, which is fine because we are live on YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch, which is cool.
Oh, geez.
I've never heard of Periscope in my life. John, please explain.
Periscope is Twitter's live streaming. So if you are on
What?
Twitter, it is attached to Twitter. So you'll see people that have their Twitter accounts. You'll see them go live. That is via Periscope because it's owned by them.
So with that, Periscopes have nothing to do with birds.
Yes.
Mark, confirm or deny?
Confirm.
Confirm. So I'm not going to do the whole welcome until we're live on all platforms. So you guys watching us on Twitch, Periscope, or YouTube, watch me clean my glasses.
And you can see right down here, it says Gigabytes TV. Go to youtube.com/Gigabytes
Oh, hey.
TV and subscribe because why not? We are now
Now-
live on Facebook.
Hooray, Facebook!
Good. What's up, folks? How's it going? So today, our topic of conversation is gameplay balance. Is perfect balance desirable? If it is, how do we achieve it? If it's not, what do we do in the absence of that? So yeah, let's go ahead and start off the bat. John, you said you were talking with your roommate before earlier this week.
Yeah, so my roommate is an avid gamer, just like me. That's how we met. But we were talking about that, and we came to the conclusion that perfect game balance isn't desirable for the health of a game.
Okay.
And it's weird. So when I say health of the game, I mean like health of the company and like fiscally healthy for the system. And I'll go into that later, but I want Mark's opinion. Do you like perfect game balance? Do you want everything to be balanced?
Well, for one, I don't think it's achievable.
Yeah, you don't think it's... But would you want it if it was?
No.
No?
Because perfect game balance actually leads to a stagnant meta.
Yeah. And that's what me and my roommate kind of came to, where we're like, hey, if everything was 100% balanced and fair, the game gets boring. And it also prevents the excitement like of new releases and things like that. I wouldn't say prevents, but like it diminishes, even if it's just slightly, like being like, oh, hey, there's this like new shiny thing and it looks as good as everything else. Neat. So I think like on like surface level, it's easy to say, yeah, we want a game that's 100% balanced and fair for every single thing in the game. But I think that leads to fatigue and burnout and kind of like a boring, like over a long period of time, it gets boring and people kind of lose interest.
I think the term you really want to strive for is well balanced.
Yes. Yeah. Like Jeremy Jones just said that. It was like, hey, this game is well balanced. It's just not perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's
So-
go over some of the factors that go into balance. So you have things like unit strength, you have things like the actual stats of the unit, models, etc.
Correct.
But you also have things like how the players play the game, right? So you have some people whose play style is very aggressive. How do you account for, game balance if one person plays the same army very aggressive versus someone else who plays it not so aggressive? Like those kind of things are really hard to account for when you're thinking about balancing.
Correct. And you have to look at it from, like, if you're trying to balance from one player to another, it's never going to work. You have to get sample sizes, right? Like, you have to get enough people playing that one army in a variety of ways for you to really determine what's balanced and what the course of action is. Like, let's go to, for example, they're coming out for this one game, which I absolutely love. But they want you to run it as a aggressive Zerg army. Man, I only want to play dinosaur men, but I want the big stompy defensive dinosaurs that sit in the back and kind of pew pew lasers, right?
Dino Riders.
Correct. Yeah, I want to do that. The game is not balanced for me do that. Like, so like if we're looking at a game that's like perfectly balanced, you should be able to take any combination of units from any particular army and be able to do just as well as something else. But if I take in a game like Age of Sigmar or whatever, and I take something that isn't necessarily tailored for the army, I take all these support pieces and try to run them as everything pieces. I'm going to lose the game, but the company shouldn't look at me complaining online being like, hey, this army's busted, it's not fun to play as, like, no one should get into this, why is this army so bad?
Yeah.
Where, you know, if you look at like a national average or even like worldwide like reports from tournaments, like let's say these dinosaurs are doing incredibly well, just not the way I'm playing them. Yeah. Then you could say, hey, this faction is balanced, this faction is playable, you're just taking...
Yeah, like the tournament list might show, they take a portion of John's list and then they, you know, they go to Zerg the rest of the round. But John's like 100% support. Like if I played like Warhammer Fantasy where I only sent wizards in the combat, I'm not going to do very well. I might like wizards. In fact, there's a way I could play it beforehand where I could switch the stats between two characters if I duel. So my wizard would be like, cool, I'm the fighty lord now, you're the wizard, and he just beats the crap out of the guys. Like, it was just one of the scary things that my opponent had to deal with, is they might have this wizard who steals their ability and gives you his. It's like, now you're the wizard, and just beats the crap out of him. But one thing you really have to realize is that a lot of times people will go with net lists. They'll go online and be like, all right, this is a powerful list. But like John was mentioning, playstyle. If it doesn't fit your playstyle, you might not be a good pilot for it. A lot of times people will pick up a list they find on the internet and they'll be like, this list won 4 out of the 5 major tournaments. And then they'll play it and they'll lose because, you know, they might not even watch how the list is played. They'll play it their own playstyle and they'll be like, how is this winning? This isn't balanced.
Yeah, like, so that happens with me, like, a lot. If I look at a net list, I usually play fairly aggressively in a lot of these games. And so if I, like, take a list and I'm trying to pilot something that's on the defensive side, I generally don't do well with it because I'm being aggressive with these pieces I should hold back. And once again, it's not a fault of the game balance or anything like that. It's just playstyle issues. And so, like, all these factors lead into overall game balance, right? Like, miniature games are games in general, right? Like, so the more complex a game gets, the harder it is to balance. Like, you look at chess. Chess is going to be one of the most well-balanced games out there, right?
The armies are exactly the same.
Correct. The armies are exactly the same. The rules for each piece are incredibly simple. It's just basically follow these move patterns. You have like a set thing, like you have one win condition, you have like all this sort of stuff. So there's a lot of complexity and depth in chess, but the rules itself, very limited. And so when you start getting into games like 40K or War Machine, you're playing with a chessboard with thousands of pieces and hundreds of additional extra rules, if not thousands of additional rules. And so trying to balance all that together is really impossible. But if a company was able to do that, like I've seen a lot of games that have become incredibly well balanced, or to the point where they kind of figured out what worked, and the game kind of stagnated because people didn't need to change armies. They didn't need to switch things up because they knew what they had bought from before was still working and still would be able to work. And so when a new piece came out, it doesn't change the meta. It doesn't shift the way that you have to play or shift the plan that you have. And so that's a big part of game companies and something that they have to absolutely think about. Like, if they make a 100% balanced game, it doesn't encourage new purchases. It doesn't encourage a different play style, and it gets repetitive very quickly.
Yep.
I hadn't thought about that.
Go to the extreme, and you have power creep.
Yeah, and so if you hit power creep, it also becomes a huge detriment because people feel like they can't keep up. Like, you know, this is a hobby, right? Like, this is our hobby. No one here plays miniature games for a living, right? Right, Mark?
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah. You can't basically just tell people, hey, drop $200, $300 each month to keep up, to play the game that you like to play. It's not feasible. As much as a game store, we would love that, right? But like, so everyone has a set hobby budget, and this is something that a lot of companies think about when they make new releases or prices and all that sort of stuff. They know, hey, each person on average has this amount to spend on all of their hobbies in a monthly time frame. So let's make sure that what we release is feasible for someone to pick up, to either add to a new list or make a new or start a new army kind of thing. So they don't want to create that burnout where they're like, oh shit, like that's our one. I got to keep dropping this money each month just to stay relevant. But like, if it's like, okay, hey, like new army comes out, maybe that one model that wasn't really good because it had a bunch of rules that you weren't able to take effect with. Now with this new army, that one model for $15 now answers a lot of questions that this new army's putting out. So let me spend that $15 on the model, some stuff to paint. So I'm spending like $50 a month, like, you know, maybe new paints or tools or whatever, and go from there.
Like imagine a new faction comes out, they're heavy in the spellcasters.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you might drop the $15 to get your anti-wizard model going to just deal with that. So you can adapt your list to deal with new stuff. Yeah, but it's not like you're dropping the $200 extra dollars to stay relevant.
And so Adam actually kind of makes in one, Adam, good luck on your tournament.
Yeah.
Two, that's one of the reasons why Games Workshop released that FAQ is because from that one tournament, that 6 Hive Tyrant list.
Yeah.
You know, like they don't want to have to make people feel like they have to go out and buy 6 Hive Tyrants to be relevant in a tournament. And I feel, you know, some people obviously are in that like tournament lifestyle and like they want to be competitive and relevant, so like they might have like bought that army super quick, which I always advise if you see a spammy army that is too good to be true, an investment. I working in the game industry for the decades that I have, not that old yet. The moment someone buys a spammy list is the moment it's going to get FAQ'd.
Yep. So basically, don't invest in something when the outcome is one person having fun with it. Like that's really it. If it's just one person being like, you know, screaming and laughing and just like having fun while everyone else is just sitting at the table, just like, yep, all right, is it my turn yet? You know, that's usually doesn't last. Either the game doesn't last or the rules don't last. Like either way.
Yep. So what about you, John? Like, what were your thoughts on game balance before we started talking? What was...
Yeah, so basically, like, I was actually asking this question yesterday. I asked it on Discord, and I asked, you know, if you're building an army, especially, like, helping out a new player, let's say they want to play Eldar, and you're building a new army, and they ask, how does it play? You know, do you go for how the meta is at the moment or how the average person plays it? Because that's a totally different thing. Like the highly competitive level, it seems like, you know, like with Tyranids, you know, they might, before it got FAQ'd, the 7, you know, Flyrants. So versus a typical Tyranid player who's going to bring more of a swarm army, right? And so helping out a new player, does it help them to think that the only way that they can be powerful or feel powerful with their army is to be at the top of the meta and consider that? Or do you just kind of go with what the average is and say it's designed around a certain feel and a certain theme, so kind of build toward that? And so then my thought after that was like, okay, well, you know, is it truly balanced for that? Or the current methods that GW is doing is basically we design it one way and then we'll just prevent the, like what Mark said with the spammy stuff. Prevent the overpowered things.
So like us as a store and me working here, whenever I have someone new starting 40K, or any game in general, I usually encourage them to pick out a diverse set of pieces. For a couple of different reasons. One, the most important one is it gives you a variety of things to build and paint.
Yeah.
So it gives you kind of like what the faction looks like as a whole and all that sort of stuff, which I think is really important for someone starting the game, is just seeing all that there is to offer with a faction, right? And the different ways that you can assemble things and different things, how things different paint and all that. But it also gives them a pool of different pieces to build lists from there. Because, you know, even at the competitive level, there's not one way to play each army, right? There's sometimes the the meta way to play like that one army.
Yeah.
Like with Tyranids, you can totally build swarms and be relevant in a tournament. You just have to build it completely differently. So as a new player, pick them out a variety of relevant pieces. It doesn't have to be like well balanced, if that makes sense. Like, you don't have to say like, bring, make sure you, like if they're like, hey, I really want to play like a melee army, it's like bring them over to orcs or Tyranids and be like, all right, cool, pick up all these melee pieces. You don't have to like forget range, throw that out of the door. Like, get these like cool stompy, like get them like a Carnifex kit and then some Hormagaunts and like a hive, like Swarmlord or whatever. Be like, all right, cool, these are all your melee pieces. It's not well balanced or whatever, but hey, these are all good things that you get to use in different lists or all together in a list kind of thing.
And actually, a lot of the times, if someone's new to it, their introduction to 40K has come from like Dawn of War.
Yeah.
Where they watch swarms of... Yeah, exactly.
They just watch people.
Swarms of Tyranids just show up and it's like, wow, I want to play that.
Yeah.
You're not going to be like, all right, I'm here to play my Swarms of Tyranids. It's like, here's 6 Swarm Lords. Enjoy. It's like, that's not their idea of Tyranids.
If anyone's wondering about Mark, he's patient 0. Just...
I'm patient 0.
Forgive Mark and his raspy voice, but he's getting over a mild illness. But yeah, like, so starting off new players, always like, so the Start Collecting is a great box set because one, it's a value. So like, you pick up a Start Collecting. Oh, hey, there's a unit in there that like that isn't necessarily seen a lot in tournament or competitive play. Hey, you basically got that for free. Like, take the time to paint that, mod it up, do whatever you want to it. And it gives you that reservoir or additional models. Let's say rules change or a new army comes out or they redo the codex for your book, and that what was in that box that wasn't necessarily top tier is now at least in a better spot.
Relevant, is it?
Yeah, relevant. Relevant's a good word. So yeah, it's, and this all goes to game balance, right? Like, the nice thing about 40K, I was talking to Mark about it, is like, with how they've done the rules, most of the time any model can be good in the tournament aspect or competitive or casual play. There's nothing that's usually fundamentally broken about something's rules where they're like, hey, it doesn't matter what point cost this is. The rules are just bad, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't exist in 40K because everything's able to interact with everything else on the board, right?
Yeah.
For at least some aspects, flyers. Some flyers you have to be a flyer to hit.
Right.
But it's all point cost, right? So at any time with a chapter approved or an FAQ, all they have to do is adjust that number, right? And what was not attractive is like, oh man, I can start putting this in lists because it dropped a point or two, and that changed it from something that was a little too expensive to that like Goldilocks just right category. So that's something that I really like with something like 40K, where the rules, like, there's a lot of complexity in the rules, but most of the time they are well enough like designed to where just point costs can be the difference, right? Like they usually don't have to rewrite stuff. It's more or less clarifying what the wording is more than anything else. So
yeah, like with the rowboat girly man, as David said. Infamously said.
Jack those points up, man.
Yep.
Those rookie points, they need to go up. But it's true, like Gilman like gives a lot of buffs and benefits to it, but eventually you'll hit a point cost to where he won't be the auto include, right? Like, you could make him a high enough point value to where you're like, okay, like, am I getting enough benefit out of Gilliman for the points, or is it now a more attractive option to take just more guys shooting than necessarily one guy saying reroll your wounds and hits? So like, I know people are saying, hey, monoliths are poopy right now. I think if they dropped enough points, that would be a good way. And so this also comes into an issue with something like monoliths. Monoliths are big centerpiece models. You want them to feel like big centerpiece. And so that's something to where maybe a points adjustment isn't necessarily the case, because you want to make sure that the rules on them feel big and impressive, and the fact that, like, hey, I bought this. How much? Like $80 model?
I think it's, yeah,
something 80, like that. So I want to get my value, or I want to make this feel like a big investment. So maybe like bump up those rules instead of like dropping it down, because you drop down the point cost on Monolith enough, you're going to start seeing like 4 monoliths running around the table, and that's going to cause another issue altogether.
Right, that's a good point. Like, let's talk about trajectory of how companies fix the balance. So we know FFG does a lot of balancing on X-Wing, for instance. I know that one thing, I was actually talking to someone yesterday about it, how, you know, with X-Wing on, this is going back to the competitive versus casual thing. As a new player, they might just like Luke Skywalker, but I think Poe Dameron is like a better Luke Skywalker, basically. And Matt, I know if you're watching, would be able to tell us more about that, or any of the X-Wing players. But, you know, how do you basically, as a hobby, obviously, we want to be able to do whatever we want, right? Can you maybe play Luke as Poe in the rules? I know for tournaments that might not be allowed, but you know, with casual games like with 40K, you basically kind of do what you want to do.
So that's where like a lot of, I think, issues come up with, and this is why like, you know, this is definitely where like the chess analogy like super falls off. But because there is story and background lore in each game, you want to make sure that these characters that you know and love and are able to interact with feel like those characters. I'll use my current like hot button is Barnabas the Lord of Blood. So in the story, my army, the Gatormen, from War Machine and Hordes, were a cult of zealous warriors trying to ascend their leader into godhood. It eventually happened. The guy ascended to a god, or at least a demigod, right?
Oh, we're halfway there.
Yeah. Whoa.
Living on a prayer.
There we go. But he ascended to a demigod, which is great. His rules don't necessarily reflect that, right? And that, to me, as a player, creates a disconnect, right? Like, so I'm supposed to be playing with the demigod. I don't care what necessarily, like, detriments in terms of point costs that I have to pay for it. But if it doesn't feel like that, I am kind of distraught about it, right? And the same thing with like Luke. Luke and Vader should always feel like powerful options, because that's what you expect as a player, right? It is something that is in your mind. These guys are what this whole like fiction is about, right? Like, you know, at the center of Star Wars is that conflict of, you know, the light side most represented by Luke versus the dark side, most represented by Darth Vader. And with those pinnacle characters, you want them to feel like that, right? And that's one of those things, going to 40K, Guilliman should always feel powerful and relevant, just like all the other Primarchs, because these are, once again, demigods running around on the table. They should feel like that.
Yeah.
I definitely think a great job with making the Primarchs feel that way. Well, obviously, Guilliman's the only Imperial one, but like Mortarion and Magnus, like they always seem to be staple pieces on the board for both their factions.
And I know like Magnus and Mortarion just got adjusted and kind of tweaked a little bit with some of the FAQ rules, like no more Chaos Soup or Imperium Soup. And Magnus took a little bit of hit for his survivability from the new Thousand Suns Codex, but still, when you pop them on the board, they feel powerful. And like in a casual game or whatever, you can totally like handle that power of a Primarch in your hand and just like, you know, punch through a tank, or with Magnus, like shoot psychic fire, like, you know, halfway across the board. It feels good, right? Like it gives you that sense of satisfaction. And so this is like that's the big problem with like game balance in a sense too, right? Like you want to make these characters feel powerful, and finding that balance is difficult. And that being said, when the new Thousand Suns Codex came out, all you were doing was seeing Magnus and Mortarion holding hands, wrecking stuff across the battlefield. Thousand Suns book came out, FAQ came out. You don't see those guys as much anymore, but new things have risen in their place, which meant that, hey, if I'm an Imperium player reacting to this, what I have to tailor my list to changes, which means my gameplay experience is much more exciting,
and
right?
diverse,
So
That's cool.
So yeah. Thing where like you need to always try to be a balanced game, but recognizing that it's an impossibility for most things is will set you free in a sense. So hey, make that new thing that's coming out change up the game a bit, right? Whether it's a new army book or for like Warmachine and Hordes, a new theme force. Change that tournament system up so it's not always the same game over and over.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to want to buy a new army time and time again. But I am okay with buying like a new unit if something becomes good, or I need to change my list now. Like when the Thousand Suns Codex came out, before then I had a bunch of like I had Magnus and my Terminator Lords and my Demon Princes. Thousand Suns Codex come out. Those things I'm not going to like bring as much to the board now. Now I want to bring a bunch of Zangors. I like that because I have an Age of Sigmar army as well that wants a bunch of Zangors. So I'm okay with buying a box or two of Zangors plus another Shaman. It's pretty good for me. So yeah, it's definitely kind of a good way to approach the game. Like you know, like I had to change my purchases a little bit. I had to change how I play my list. It makes things more exciting. I have a new type of army to try to figure out and win against.
Yeah, I was watching one of the or listening to one of the podcasts along where they were talking about basically experimenting, you know, trying out new things, especially with the constant changing codexes, the interactions between the codexes, the FAQ being released, and the new Deep Strike rules that for some things it cripples some things, but at the same time, maybe it isn't as bad as people make it out to be. We don't know. So I guess we'll really know in a month or two when people have tried it consistently and tried new ways of interacting with those rules. But it's tough. Like, what do you guys think about tweaks versus overhauls? Like, tweaks might be changing something's point value by 2 points. An overhaul might be like what they did with Deep Strike rules.
Yeah, so overhauls should only be used in extreme cases because of the amount of blowback it causes, right? We saw that with the FAQ. People were like, oh my god, this is terrible. Warmachine and Hordes is always my go-to example. When Mark III came out, Scorn was the maligned stepchild faction of the game. Everyone kind of didn't like the rules. Basically, the issue was there was nothing really exciting to play because everything basically did the same thing for varying points levels. So it became very, like, you know, you ended up finding the most efficient thing to do the one thing that the army wanted to do at that point, and you played it, and it wasn't even, like, super good at it. So people came out and were like, hey, we don't enjoy this army. It's an entire faction that we don't like. And Privateer Press was like, hold up, let me tweak something a little bit. So they kind of fiddled with some point costs, maybe like changed the rule or two, and people came back. It was like, that's fine. Like, you know, things are better, but overall the faction is stagnant, right? It all does the same thing. So Privateer Press had to overhaul an entire faction. And that's a big thing. It ended up being for the best. Like, the faction now is really exciting to play. There's a variety of options to take, and a lot of new things that you can do with it. But it did create a bit of, like, so it created a bit of distrust and disconnect with the company when they did that, right?
Okay.
Because they came out and they're like, hey, here's this faction in this new rule set. People were like, don't really like it. The Privateer Press is like, no, it's fine. Let's just change the little things. You were like, still don't like it. And then they did the overhaul, right? And so, you know, it was bad faith that required the company to readdress something and fix it, right? And so doing a big overhaul is usually is a sign of something being, like, fundamentally wrong, right? And that's not good for a company, because as a company, you want to look like, you know, you are, like, well testing, well balancing, and doing all that sort of stuff. So overhauls are usually a sign of, like, oh, hey, maybe this was an oversight by them. So yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk about our perspective. I guess we talk a little bit about perspective from a game store, but I know folks like to hear about, like, how local game stores view these changes and stuff. Like, the big thing is that how the companies do stuff is out of our hands. Like, we basically have to go with it. You know, like with this live stream, we report on new things, we give some opinions, some commentary, but ultimately, like what the company what Games Workshop decides to do is kind of out of our hands. We just kind of have to go with it. Thoughts?
Yeah. So as a game store company, we never really get the whole, how do you think the balance is right now? Like, that is never a question. Because we've talked to people in the company, and most of the time, the companies, like, they'll come to us and they'll ask more so about marketing or, hey, how's your organized play doing? And, like, our responses are usually, you know, like, they're very directed in what we can and cannot influence. So a lot of times we could be like, oh, hey, we need more organized play, or this works well, this doesn't, in terms of sales and things like that. Gameplay balance completely out of our hands, other than the fact that we could go to a company being like, listen, guys, you goofed. You need to address this. They're never going to be like, oh, how do we do that? They're more so, we'll look into it.
They're like, hey, how do you feel about this unit? And we're like, nerf it. They're like, that's not going to happen. They have enough people online screaming that at them anyway. Yeah, they're not going to come to us. And besides, like, as a game store, a lot of times we might not even have the person on the phone might not even play the game they're referring to, because there's a lot of games and there's not enough time to play all of them. But you know, as far as like my opinion on tweaks and overhauls, I do enjoy overhauls, especially when I hear a lot of complaints about the meta being stagnant. But I also really enjoy tweaks when it comes to just saying, oh, now I can actually take this unit and it's, you know, on par points wise with another unit. So my list became more diverse, and it hasn't really affected my overall playstyle, except for making it just more diverse. Like I asked John earlier this morning, why don't I ever see Primaris Reavers on the field? And he just said, they're a little too expensive. Like, they're not bad. They just haven't reached that Goldilocks point cost yet.
So, you know, it's like, as a game store, these tweaks and overhauls are usually beneficial to us. The sheer standpoint of it does drive sales. Plain and simple. We enjoy that. But it's, you know, it's the whole, like, I think deforestation is the, like, best thing, where it's like, we want the game to be healthy, just like we would want, like, you know, a forest preserve to be healthy, in terms of, like, hey, we get the sales from a good place, a healthy state that encourages future sales. But when a company starts doing, like, tweaks and overhauls like crazy, and people have to buy the Flavor of the Month army, you're literally cutting down the entire forest and not leaving anything to come back to later. So to us as a store, it's, you know, striving for that game balance, but making sure that there's always something new and compelling to buy, or to play is fantastic. But good faith on the players, to the, like, you know, good faith in a company will keep a game around. Like, you know, 40K has basically a locked-in audience. A lot of times it's growing, but, like, once you're kind of in 40K, once you've made that investment, you're generally going to be in 40K for the rest, for the rest of your hobby experience, right? Because you can always come back. But, you know, there are some people that, like, in previous editions where there was a lot of power creep, or maybe necessarily entire factions weren't that great, people got burnt out and didn't want to, like, you know, buy stuff. So, and that's an issue. With 8th edition, it's been fantastic because we have a lot of returning players, we have a lot of new players, and every army has at least some way being relevant in a tournament setting, which is fantastic. Yeah, there's always going to be, like, you know, the tier list of who's at the top and all that. But I could pretty much bring any one of those armies that I feel like and run it, right? And do well in the tournament. And it's great to tell people that, because it's like, oh, hey, that's awesome, because I've always wanted to play Sisters, or
Plastic Sisters coming.
Plastic Sisters are coming, or Orcs, you know, like. So it's great to have that. It's great to tell people that. It's really healthy.
As far as overhauls are concerned, there's only one time I've been extremely upset about it, was when they, and this has been a while to let you know, because it was Warhammer Fantasy. When Empire moved from 7th to 8th edition with the new army book, You know, we knew some nerfs were coming. One of them was to our mortars, which is our nice artillery piece we had. And we're like, you know, I can accept it going down in strength. I can accept it going up in points. But when the book came out, they did both. And I was like, really? Like one or the other would have been acceptable. And so no one took the piece anymore. It just dropped off the table. Went from a staple to just never taken.
Yeah. Jeremy, real quick. Privateer Press is coming out with new paints with the Crucible Guard release, so expect that in July. I don't know how many paints are releasing with the first wave, but it will be the start. There's several new colors being introduced just with the Crucible Guard line.
Nice. That just
Sorry.
No, I was thinking about the topic that segued from that. Oh, speaking of models, Webway Gate is coming finally.
Yes. Oh my God,
amazing.
Thank you, Ricky, if you're in here for posting that. We were doing our pre-show chat with John, and John's like, "Yeah, that webway is really cool," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Check out Warhammer Community." It's not even up on the Warhammer Community site yet. It's just an article made for it. Ricky was helpful enough to post that in a lot of our groups. This webway gate looks awesome. I love that they're coming out with more terrain, in terrain that does stuff, right? This is another great way to add to the game without creating the problems of like model bloat and things like that. It's giving you different options without it necessarily being a necessity, I think. But this is a new model coming out in the near future with the release of the Harlequins and the Deathwatch Codexes. But it is 2 spires that kind of make a half of an oval. Yeah. Sorry, words. And it's taller than a Wraith Knight. So it's like,
I mean, you got to fit a Wraith Knight through it, right?
Exactly. So this will be really cool to see on the tabletop. I like to hope that some of our Eldar players will get them and paint them up real cool, so we'll have some terrain on the board.
I just immediately imagine if it wasn't big enough, a Wraith Knight just runs towards it and like cannonballs together, and then like it pops out.
Just kaiju's out of it, just like breaks it apart as it's walking through. But no, it's really great. I really would love to see more Xenos terrain 40K, like maybe like a Rupture Spire for Tyranids, or a Tau turret base. Like some of the stuff that Forge World has that doesn't necessarily have like a plastic equivalent yet. That would be really cool.
And they have the Venator gangs with for Necromunda. So they're releasing Van Saar soon.
Next week. Next week Van Saar comes out. So next week it's Van Saar plus some more of the Deepkin characters. But this week in particular, we have these guys releasing Saturday.
The deepest of kin characters.
Yes. Yeah. So this is King Volturnos plus it has the options to make an Akellan King on the back. So Volturnos is the big name character for the Deepkin faction. Whole heck of a lot. A big aura bubble that gives bonuses to your whole faction. And then the Akellan King is the kind of budget version of him. Still has all those cool auras, just in a smaller radius, which is pretty cool. So
what is the Deepkin shtick, I guess? What is their thing?
I like the tides. Is really
cool. So they have 2 things to them. One, the entire faction has the 40K character rule, so you can only shoot with ranged combat the model that is the closest to you, or the unit that's closest to you, which is really nice. It has something to do. So they're like those bad guys from Doctor Who, to where you forget about them if you're not looking at them. So that's the reason why you can only target the closest one to you. The second rule set is the Tides ability.
Yeah, which so every turn, the tides, it goes from high tide, low tide, ebb tide, all that, and it changes what your army can do, or what your opponent bonuses. Or what your opponent can do to you. So like for example, what's it with high tide?
So low tide is what it starts off with, and that gives you +1 cover.
And there's actually a character that switches it.
Correct. Yeah. And then high tide basically gives you an additional attack, right? Corey, confirmation. What's high tide do?
High tide is where you.
Oh yeah. You strike first in combat. Oh, so nice. That means it really encourages you to get in there.
And ebb tide lets you retreat from combat. And still charge or shoot.
Correct. And so the tides will constantly rotate around.
I'm still waiting for a Alabama themed Deepkin
roll tide. Oh my god, John, you can make that happen. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, that's the two special rules for the army. But besides that, they are a relatively light armored faction. So like 3-up is the most that they naturally get. But most of their infantry and characters are going to be sitting around a 4 or 5-up. They're elves. So
I talked to Kai yesterday, who is now commenting. 6-up is what some of their saves are as well. They're pretty squishy. Okay. I guess that fits with fishing. But
what's the turtle thing? Do?
Oh god.
So the turtle is it's a literal tank. So it is the 3-up save. So between their special rules and spells, you can make it like a 1-up or 2-up.
Wait, it's a fish tank?
Well, so like it's a turtle tank.
No,
it's a fish tank. But it has a ranged attack. It has a bunch of melee attacks, and then it has the Void Drum ability to it. So there's a Namarti on the back with some bongo drums,
dropping some sick beats.
Yes, and he does, and it gives +1. It gives a cover save to everyone nearby him. So it becomes really easy to increase those saves of your lightly armored units.
Is it like the Bastiladon? Is it immune to rend?
No, it is not. It is not like the Bastiladon. So the only thing that's immune to rend are the defensive eel riders. So.
So we also have the archer unit. Or the Deepkin.
Yes. Something that I really like about the Namarti boxes is the Namarti Thralls and the Namarti Reavers. When you buy a box, you don't have to worry about like trying to outfit them correctly. They all come as a baseline option. So like there's no like picking what war gear you want. It's whether or not you're going to make a leader and put a banner on it, and that's it. And a musician, I believe. So it's really nice. The Namarti Reavers have 2 modes of fire. They have a long-range single shot, and then if you get in half of their range, they have a triple shot ability, which is really cool.
It's kind of like what the Stormcast crossbow guys had.
Yep. So they're really flexible. I like that there's 2 separate boxes for the Thralls and the Reavers. One makes the price different, makes the price more affordable with them. They don't have to add extra money to have a bunch of different bits on there. And 2, it allows them to have the baseline models being vastly different poses. So the Reavers are in these like quick skirmishy poses, and the Thralls are in these like squat sword stance, like ready for battle poses. So it just makes the army even more gorgeous than it already was. So but yeah.
Oh, there's new paints as well. There's 2 new paints for it.
Yeah, so there's Iron Rack skin and Deepkin flesh. I want to say is the 2.
Deepkin flesh. Yeah.
Is that more of a greenish, more of a pallid?
Yeah. So those are going to be like on those eggshelly colors. So it's going to be a deeper eggshell. So it's going to be different than like Screaming Skull and Tyrant Skull. They're going to be a little bit tinted more green. But algae-ish. Algae-ish. Hey, there we go. And then new line of off-whites. Off-whites are really, really good in the painting world because using pure white usually looks like you have an unfinished model.
That's horrible.
I always like off-whites. I always like the options to have more off-whites in the game, or in the painting.
It's like, will your model stand out in front of a sheet of paper?
Yeah, so it's always good to do. Like, you can use pure white. I was actually doing some painting demos. With the new hobby table, guys, if you ever want painting demos, bring your models in, bring your paints. Me or Mark will show you a thing or 2.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But we will show you what limited knowledge we know about painting. So, it's absolutely awesome.
So if I'm building an army, so the Thralls are the melee. The Reavers are kind of skirmishy range.
Pose.
What else is releasing in the next couple of waves, I guess, for it? Because it's releasing over the course of a month, right?
Yeah. So next week is the rest of the characters. So there's 3 new characters coming out, $25 a piece. They each do wildly different things for the army. So one of them reverses the tide rules, which is really neat. Another one increases Namarti Thralls by a whole lot. He has got an aura for them. And then the last one, the Soul Scryer, he lets you put stuff in reserve and gives you bonus charge ranges on a single target. So you can choose a model and say, hey, everyone else get plus 3 inches to charge versus that one model.
So the one that does the reserve, does he allow like the Stormcast kind of deep strike ability, or?
Yeah. Well, they come in from a table edge. So, so he can choose up to 2 units, and they'll come in from a different table edge and do all that.
So it makes it just threatening from the sides as well.
Absolutely.
In terms of points, like how many points is a basic Thrall box worth?
It's like 100-something points. Kai can probably chime in and give me a specific answer. I think it's like 180 for 10 Thralls. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this. But yeah, so Thralls are going to be in that like
140 to 180.
Yeah. Between 40 and 200, depending on how many you bring and all that.
Yeah. Do we know what the minimums and maximums are?
I think it's like 360 for a unit of 30 Thralls.
Oh wow. Okay.
I remember. So I know you get like a bit of a discount for bringing like a full block.
Which with the second General's Handbook, I really enjoyed that they do that.
Yeah. What is that?
Because it's
just the point cost rules. Yeah.
It's just in their points. But ever since Warhammer Fantasy ended, when Age of Sigmar came, a lot of people would just be like min unit, because you get that officer, you get the standard and the musician with it. Like there was no points increase for it, and so you're like, why get a whole unit when no one's special past the first purchase?
Yeah.
And so people would just run minimum units. But now if you run the whole unit, like I get a discount. So full unit.
Yeah.
And it really brought that older feel of Warhammer Fantasy to the tabletop again, where you have these hordes of guys going against each other. I remember as an Empire player having, like 40 people in a block of halberdiers led by a warrior priest. Like that felt great. And it was actually a neat thing you could do with Empire, where you'd have 3 blocks of 40 halberdiers just going at it, dying in droves, but you had this warrior priest saying, stay strong, men.
That's cool.
So we have a couple new releases this week. I'm going to pull Corey Hawkman, one of our new employees over here, to talk about some of these new board games.
Yeah, Corey.
Corey, come on down.
Come on down.
Yeah, so we have our board game demo tables. Anyone in the Atlanta area? If you're not in Atlanta, you know, next time you visit, come see him. But we have 4 tables set up near our retail area, which is, if you're looking at Mark, it's to his right that way. Oh, I just stabbed Corey in the face with the green screen. Yeah, come sit down, Corey. Tell us.
Oh, hey.
Have a seat.
Thanks.
All right, what's the first new thing on the docket?
Sure. So first we have Sakura. There you go. I'll let Mark be the orientation. So it's done. It's a old Arena Knizia game that's been reissued by Osprey Games. It's really cool because they're really known for taking like older titles and really jazzing up the components and making really nice packaged products.
So they changed the art as well.
Yeah, I mean they definitely just updated a lot of things.
Yeah.
But the big thing about the game that's really cool is it's a neat like push your luck style game, where you're all these painters trying to be as close to the emperor who's traveling around the garden. At different points as he's like walking around and venturing around.
So the guards get cautious and kick you out, kind of thing, or
if you get like too close and you push too far and you like bump into the emperor, it's like disgraceful. And then you push people back, so it's like an interesting little like battle. And all the players have the exact same hand of cards, but like as you play them, you can't do them until they're picked back up. So there's a nice like give and take as you're moving. So it's a nice like quick, easy to teach, fast playing game.
You said from Osprey?
pretty cool.
Yeah, Osprey.
Nice. What's next?
Then we have Space Base. So it's a new game by AEG. Looks to be like a dice management style game that they've got. I know this was a big thing. I think John, you said they talked about this a lot at Gamma.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, I was there with John at Gamma, and it was wonderful. They're like, all right, guys, get excited for Space Base. Moving on. I was like, what? Like, please tell me why I should be excited for this game. But no, they were really pushing Space Base. They said they had a lot of great playtesting for it. I just wish they would have told me what the playtest was all about. I think that would have helped a lot.
I know we've already had a couple people come in and pick up copies of it. So there's definitely been on some folks' radar. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. So it's one of those that I'm going to take a look at if anyone brings it and opens it up at the store.
Check if y'all bumped the camera, possibly.
Yep.
Because you're frozen. I'm gonna do a little. You can keep talking though. Keep talking.
All right. Cool. All right. Next up, we have Fox in the Forest. I love this game. If you want like a really cheap 2-player, it's a trick-taking game. So if you're kind of familiar, but it's got a really neat system that you don't want to win too hard. So like if you know that you're losing like that set, you can just start bombing hands. And you can actually do incredibly well by losing way more than your opponent won. And then they get no points for beating you too badly.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's really gorgeous. Lots of really cool abilities.
Wait for it. Wait for it. They left the call and they're going to come right back. This reminds you of when you're watching YouTube on a crappy 4G connection. Yeah. You can do it. They can do it. Oh, all right. There we go.
Are we good? All right. Cool.
You made
it. Cool. Did you get any of the Fox in the Forest stuff? Did that all come through? Or do we need
yeah. But you can go ahead and repeat it just because we like you.
All right.
Thanks.
So wonderful.
So yeah, if you want to grab that. So again, Fox in the Forest, a 2-player trick-taking game. Play. And again, the really neat thing about this game, aside from the fact that the artwork is just absolutely amazing on it, is that it does have a neat like balance mechanic that you want to win, but you don't want to win too much. Because if you win too many of the hands, you get no points. And the person who loses so many of the hands gets a ton of. So it's got a really nice, like, that one person's just crushing you. You're just like, okay, cool. I'm going to throw the rest of the hands this series and see if I can lose way more. Next up is Shards of Infinity. Same guys who did Ascension. And it's kind of like, I guess they're updated. They kind of taken a lot of those rules and mechanics of that deck builder into like a more of like a sci-fi fantasy-esque type theme. Really cool artwork. Neat thing about this is the base game is only $20 and it plays up to 4 people.
Hey,
and it's really quick. And of course, done by the guys who do Ascension, you know that there's going to be expansions and lots of content they're going to add on down the road. This is one that I've played a handful of times and really enjoyed it.
Do you know if they're planning to do like blocks like they do with Ascension?
I don't know if they're gonna do the blocks as much as just like says, but I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Like they've just said that they have a lot of things that they're planning on doing, but they just got the base game out not too long ago.
Because Ascension has put out a lot of stuff. If you were to ever like stack all the decks for Ascension, you'd probably reach the ceiling.
Yeah.
So they have to break it into blocks to make sure you didn't have just too much to play with.
Next up. Excuse me if I can try to lift this. Giga finally got in a bunch of copies of the critically acclaimed Food Chain Magnate. I know that there's like a lot of circles. If you want something that's like a really meaty economics style game of you running a bunch of like 50s diners, then the game you've been waiting for has finally come out.
That's what I've always wanted.
Yeah. I know. I've had some friends who've played this and stated that, you know, they think the mechanics are really sound. There's a really good game in here. And I mean, on things like Board Game Geek, this game gets rave reviews, but it is a bit hefty on the price tag category. But I will tell you that this box, even though it looks small, is incredibly heavy. So it is packed to the brim full of like tokens, bits, and stuff like that.
How long does a game like that last usually?
I wish I could show you, but the back of the box is
blank.
Dang.
Sad.
How long does it take to play an average game of that?
So it quotes 2 to 4 hours.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I said it is a very crunchy game. So
gotcha.
You
really wouldn't think it based on the cover.
Yeah. I know, and like even the theme.
So is it like a Twilight Imperium of fast food?
Right. It's the TI of diners.
Yeah.
Can you become the next McDonald's?
That's right. McDonald Rex.
Second place gets to be, I don't know, Burger King.
So wait, would it be, is it Mechatol Mickey D's Rex?
That's right, Mickey D's Rex.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. All right. Great. And so finally, and this isn't super new, but we've had this and we finally got a chance to play it a lot more, is Crystal Clans. This is done by Plaid Hat. If you've ever played Summoner Wars or been familiar with Summoner Wars, it's pretty much like a streamlined and improved variation of that play style. So you have a really, I don't know if you can see this yet, but it's like a really neat like space where each deck represents a different clan that has a different play style. And then you're just trying to claim crystal spaces or attack the opponent's castle and defeat them by claiming 3 crystals before the other player. What's really cool about the game is the fact that there's already like 6 different clans in the box, and they are planning to have, I think, like 16 out by the end of the year. So I know there's already 4 coming and another 6 that got announced.
Okay.
All of them play incredibly different. And they also are going to be coming out with deck construction rules probably later in the year where you can also customize. So they're putting a lot of support behind this game, and it's a lot of fun. Like, it's a really good like 2-player, just sit down, and lots of strategy, lots of depth to it.
Cool. Yeah, if y'all haven't been to Gigabytes recently, we recently moved the board game. You can see it. What would be between them two is now actually, yep, there we go. Nice pan. Look at that.
Yeah, skills.
Whoa, impressive pan there. That was good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, we've definitely rearranged it, hopefully make it a lot easier to shop, and we've increased the stock levels tremendously. So try to get a larger variety of titles.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, you're welcome. So definitely, like, if it's been a while since you come and shop the board games, please do check it out. And also, if you have titles that are coming up and things that you're interested in, let us know so we can see about getting it ordered or get it stocked in for you.
Yeah, the best thing to do is come to the store, take a look around, ask questions, walk away with something fun and new and entertaining. Yeah, that's what we do.
Especially like, with us changing up the demo tables on a regular basis. There's also like new things.
Is our current cycle every 2 weeks or every what is it?
Yeah,
2 weeks.
Nice. What are current demo games?
So right now we've got Bloodborne the card game, Quadropolis, The Grizzled, Potion Explosion, and Castle Panic.
Yeah. I recommend
without even looking.
I would definitely recommend Potion Explosion. That's one that I've actually I keep walking up to, even with no one else to play. I still pick up a marble.
It's a fantastic game. Like, it's definitely one of the best board games CMON has done in quite some time. I mean, it's pretty much like what am I thinking of? Candy Crush, the board game, but it's just a ton of fun.
Candy Crush, the board game. That's interesting.
Yeah, and Castle Panic is one that's been like a really nice entry-level cooperative style game. And fun fact, we have International Tabletop Day coming up on Saturday, and we will have some promos for Castle Panic. So if you haven't tried it yet, come check it out. If you already own it, and you come and you play some games here on Saturday, there's some cool promos we'll hand out for it.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
And we are right on time, actually. It's right at noon.
Yeah.
So we got to get going, y'all.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us.
Yeah.
Hope to see you next week.
Yep, and thanks, Corey, for showing us those cool board game stuff.
Thanks, no problem.
Let's see.